Good morning, everybody. Welcome to TLDCast. It's Thursday, the second TLDCast of 2019. Welcome, everybody. Thank you. Couple of guests today, not just one, but for the second TLDcast of 2019, we decided to have two fantastic guests talking with us about virtual reality and AR, who will also be with us at TLDC 19, January 28th and 29th. I know all of you that are in the chat, all of you you early risers, and those of you that jump into the chat early, you're already registered and already fired up to go to TLDC 19. And for that, we appreciate you tons, and thank you so much for getting those early registrations in. But one thing that you can do for us is to share TLDcast, TLDC, and TLDC 19 with all of your friends and your network. So if you could click that share button just above the chat and shoot out a little, hey, check this out style tweet or Facebook post or LinkedIn post or article. Share with all of your friends in your network, all of the value that you get from TLDC, because that's why we're here. We're here to help everybody get better at the work of training, learning, and development, whether that's cutting edge stuff like VR, AR, or back to basics. If you're needing to train some folks on the basics of instructional design, we can help. If you need virtual instructor-led training, wow, do we have a bunch of experts for that. We have a ton of people who specialize in that in our community. We have a lot of voiceover talent for e-learning. There's so many very, very, very talented people who are in the TLDC community. So lots and lots of value you can get day in and day out by being a part of the community. So please feel free to share it with your network. The bigger we get, the more we can do and the more we can offer. And so we appreciate all of you who have engaged with us so far for so many months, so many years now. Wow, we've been doing this for a long time. You guys are great, and that's why we're here. We wouldn't be here if you guys weren't showing up and continuing to share what you do and share your knowledge. And so we appreciate and will continue to do it as long as you guys let us. So thank you all so much. Let's jump into today's conversation and give a big shout out and a warm TLDC welcome to our guests today, Hugh Seaton and Debbie Richards. How are you both?
Doing great.
Wonderful. Thank you.
We have, for those of you following along at home that are interested in how we do the tech here on TLDcast, Hugh is joining us from an iPhone using the Crowdcast app, which is totally cool. We weren't sure if that was going to work, but it's working out famously. And Debbie is joining us through the usual webcam and headset version of connectivity, which also works out wonderfully. So good stuff to know. Those of you that are following along at home as well, how is my video looking today? I know we've had some clarity issues. Can I get a little shout out in the chat as far as what things are looking like today? Oh, sorry. Yes, it's very small. Sorry. Thank you. There we go. Now you can see us. It's clear but tiny. Yes, sorry. Craig's not here to coach me. I need my producer. Tell me what I need to be doing. Oh, good. Thanks, Rick. Okay. Marco. Are you really at the beach, Hugh?
I'm in Boca Raton, yes.
Wow. Awesome. So it's almost lunchtime your time. Debbie, I forget, where are you coming from?
I'm from Houston. It's red and rainy here today and kind of cold, and it's 40 some odd degrees. So it's unusual for Houston, although we do get a lot of rain.
Yeah, we've kind of got that unusual weather too. We've had some rain the last couple of days, and we went below freezing in Arizona. So everybody had their plants covered. It's very uncommon around here too. Well, not uncommon. I guess every winter it happens for a few days, and so everybody's pretty used to having to cover their rose bushes and all that kind of stuff, make sure everything doesn't freeze. But it is what it is. It'll be beautiful by the time you all get here. Let me just tell you that, because it's going to get up to 55 today. So still easily comfortable weather hanging out in Arizona. So this whole freezing stuff will go away by the time you all get here for TLDC 19. So anyways, let's jump in and let's talk a little bit about some of what we have in store for the attendees of TLDC 19. The two of you have graciously volunteered your time to hang out with us at TLDC and share your experiences with VR and AR. And, for those of you that don't know who you are, Debbie, let's just start with you and just give us a little bit of background about who you are, what you do, your industry perspective, and how you got into this cool tech stuff.
Sure. Debbie Richards, based in Houston, Texas. My company is called Creative Interactive Ideas. I named my company that because I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do 25 years ago, and I wanted to just have a company that I could do whatever the heck I wanted to do, and that's basically what I've done. I work with a lot of enterprise organizations and advise them on emerging technologies, helping them through landmines and working with different departments. Sometimes I'm a translator between the IT and the L&D department, but do a lot of work in the enterprise space. I'm also very interested in emerging technologies and help organizations plan for emerging technologies and do it in a very thoughtful way so that they aren't wasting their time and effort and budget. I have been focusing for the past year or so on VR and AR, a lot of work on AR, working with companies across the United States with different projects. Also do a lot of work in the online learning space. And then just for fun, working on some projects of my own. I'm working on a learning project with a friend of mine who teaches sushi classes. So we're going to be developing some sushi online learning classes for 2019.
Are they going to be virtual reality so we can actually cut sushi and learn how to do that?
I don't think we're going to do virtual reality, but I am planning an AR experience for the classes.
Nice. I am looking forward to that. So next time I go out for sushi, I could just point my phone at my sushi and it'll overlay and give me all sorts of cool stuff.
That's correct. And I'm hoping to have some examples for the conference next month to share with the attendees there.
Oh, nice. We've got some great sushi places around here. Oddly enough, being in the desert, we get some good fish. So it's all good. Hugh, how about you?
Cool. So I'm Hugh Seaton. I'm CEO of Aquinas Learning. We're a software company that does VR as well as a bunch of AI and voice. In fact, one of the things that we'll talk about in addition to VR and AR is how voice voice and chat can add a lot of value to that. As we'll find in VR, often it's tough to find a button. So it's nice to be able to just talk and interact that way. We work with companies primarily in the new manager and sales areas to just help upskill. And I've been in the technology game for my whole career. I started actually in marketing and advertising. In the last 10 years, I've done things like, the biggest VR AR show on the East Coast was at Javits just actually 2 months ago, as well as just meetups all over the country. So in addition to my role as a CEO, I just love watching people make great stuff and hearing them talk about the things that they've done, kind of like you. Hearing people at the cutting edge making it work and almost kind of work, and it worked and then it didn't when I was in the demo, is kind of the fun part for me.
Yeah, awesome. I think we all love that, don't we? I mean, we're all, when you're in this learning game, if you're not really jazzed about new things and seeing how stuff works, you might be in the wrong spot. I think. I don't know. I mean, everything's about change these days, right? And we should be the best at it. So, yeah. So, so let's jump into some of these questions here real quick. And like I warned you guys before, we had kind of an order to the questions, but the community has a mind of its own, a collective mind of its own, and we like to respect that. So it looks like everybody wants to know what is different about newer technologies in terms of creating real learning programs.
Debbie, you want to start?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to just do a little thoughtful reminiscing on this, because we are always engaged in having to adapt to newer technologies. And I remember many years ago when we were trying to engage people with multimedia learning, taking them to the internet, to different technologies. And for one of the big challenges is getting people to understand how those technologies work, and what's different about the way that we have to create those. And with emerging technologies, that's definitely true. If you want to have someone understand the value of using VR or AR or any of the emerging technologies, you have to give them that learning experience first, or they're not going to get it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree, Hugh?
Yeah, I would. And I'd also say, in terms of what's new, especially over the last couple of years, is increasingly not expecting learners to go and find learning, but actually making it more engaging and finding ways of getting in front of them, and removing some of the friction, the distance between the learner and what they're trying to teach them. AR and VR are fantastic at that. I mean, nothing beats VR in terms of pulling you in the middle of the content. And AR is the opposite. It allows you to bring any content to you where you are. And you hear me talking about voice and some of what artificial intelligence can add, because it's just another layer on top of that. And it's really more engagement, removal of friction, and just more nuance.
Yeah, and the big thing is, too, that when you're thinking about using these emerging technologies, don't think of them as a replacement for existing learning courses.
Yeah.
Think them as part of a blended learning experience. And that's the term we want you to use. We don't want to talk about learning programs or classes. We want to talk about the overall experience that a learner has. And these are part of that experience.
I would just, Brandon, just one more point that Debbie points out is what we've often wanted, that both Debbie and I in different sessions and conversations, is the magic happens when the depth and sophistication of learning professionals is able to be applied to these new things. Because these are, most of the people, everybody on the phone or on the session here has spent a lot of time thinking about how people learn and how they learn over time, and some of the nuance of how they learn different things. Technology doesn't replace that. In fact, it's the opposite. If you try to have technology replace it, you wind up with flat solutions that don't fit the specifics of what you're trying to teach and who you're teaching it to. So I think, one of the great things about TLDC, as well as other events and things that we do, is bringing together that sophistication and intuition with these new technologies and making them accessible, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And it's and Molly's got a great point. She says in the chat, yes, I've learned that I have to get them into a VR or AR experience within the first 5 minutes to make them feel, in quotes, the full experience to understand the technology. And I think with any new technology, it is that experience of people. You can talk about virtual reality and you can talk about AR, augmented reality, alternate realities, mixed realities, whatever we want to call them. But until somebody actually gets into one of those headsets and experiences what it's like, I think people have a really hard time understanding how they can apply it to the work that they do. But you get them into it right away, then all of a sudden the creativity starts to happen. So that's what we're hoping to do, and we're super grateful you guys are coming out to TLDC to help everybody have that experience. So
are we.
For sure. So, and And one of the things I was talking about yesterday, so yesterday we did an open forum, which I love to do, by the way. It ends up being just me, so I get a chance to ramble and get on my pedestal. But, I like talking about, Debbie mentioned the blended learning aspect, and whatever term we put on it, I just see from my experiences and from hearing Debbie and from talking with so many other professionals in the industry, it's no longer just the one-off solutions that we create anymore. Even with all of the new tech, we can't just say, oh, I'm going to make this solution a virtual reality solution. It's like, well, no, you probably aren't, whether you know it or not. There's other content out there also that people are using and so it's a bundle of products, of solutions. I don't even really know what the right terms are for the whole thing, but it's yes on performance support, and maybe a little bit of an online course, and maybe an interactive virtual thing, and maybe a community that people hang out in, and maybe a classroom session that some people will choose to go to because that works better for them than the automated self-paced learning. And I mean, it's easier than ever for us to create all of that stuff. And I think we should be thinking about how they all link together, how they support each other, even if some of them might overlap and duplicate the effort.
You wouldn't hammer nails with a screwdriver. I mean, it's the same thing. Is we've got tools that are made for different things. VR is not a great way to learn the policies the company has. It's a good way to learn the impact of those policies or of ignoring them. But if you want someone to memorize a list, VR is not a good use for that. And in contrast, a PDF isn't going to make you have empathy for someone else.
Yeah, exactly. And unless perhaps maybe you've got an extremely well-written story by an extremely experienced author that's really great at writing a good story or something to that effect. But even then, it's probably not the best solution. Let's jump into the next question that everybody wants to know. They say, how can learning organizations prepare? What's a good approach? And I think that's a great tactical step down for us to take this conversation to. So what are some of the things that you've seen out there with organizations, large or small or medium-sized, that what are they doing to sort of get ready for this change in tech?
So I'll respond to that. I think one of the first things is finding a business case use for emerging technologies. So if you're an L&D and you think that you would like to explore some sort of emerging technologies, get with a department like the safety department and brainstorm with them on some of their needs and some ways that you could use emerging technology to enhance training. So for example, with augmented reality, if you were doing forklift training, perhaps it would be beneficial to have some markers on an actual forklift. If someone, right before they get on the forklift, they need just a quick just-in-time tutorial on how to do certain functions, they could utilize that and see and do a pilot with that and see how that works and check that to see if that helps with forklift operations and reduction in safety violations and accidents. But I think a smart way of really getting out there and doing this is to do a small pilot and to find someone in a business unit that has a need for the type of technology that you're interested. And for me, my go-to department is the safety department. I have a lot of really good friends there, and they're always willing to try this. I don't think that, it's, the idea of using, there was a comment from Neil about, I have this cool technology, let me find a problem to solve it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, if you've got a training problem and you need a solution, maybe a different way of teaching or helping the student is a good approach. Hugh, do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I would say that I found that people walk around knowing the things that they're not doing a great job training with. training on rather. So I found actually a number of times we've gone into companies and we're supposed to be talking about X, and we bring the Vive, or we bring, a high quality, usually it's a Vive, VR, and they start ideating. Brent, you put your finger on this 10 minutes ago. They start getting creative because it's immersive and it opens up new windows. And more to the point, when people are in VR, it's not an abstract idea anymore. They're concretely in it, and they start to say, this would be amazing for that safety point, or the fact that, people always go too close to this server. I don't know, I'm making it up. But I find that a lot of times, like I say, they already know where their gaps are and the things that keep bugging them. And VR or AR will often make them say, oh, wow, this would be a great way for us to make people do that activity 15 times, where we couldn't do that in reality, but we can make them do it in a virtual experience. So I find that a great way to prep, back to your original question about how companies can think about this and prepare, is make a point of either pulling in some of this gear, getting someone to lend it to you, or going in a lot of big metro areas. There are arcades where you can just make a morning of it and say, everybody, we're going to go and we're going to experience VR. It's going to be, half a day or 2-3 hours. Either way, I mean, it isn't hard to get a vendor to come and bring stuff to show it to you on the assumption they've just built a new relationship. But either way, actually getting into it and learning about it in a concrete way, not an abstract way, is really important. I think a lot of people think they know what VR does, but they don't, because they haven't been in it yet.
Yeah, and I think to Neil's point in the chat too, I think it's really hard for newer technologies that it feels sometimes like we put the cart before the horse. We say, hey, we've got this cool tech, what can we do with it? In certain instances, especially as we're introducing new tech, I think you do have to experiment, because people, and obviously, smaller companies that are maybe tight on budgets and aren't going to be the ones to do that. But large enterprises that have deep pockets and large organizations, and they're willing and they know that they need to stay on the cutting edge, they are more than happy to put some money towards some experiments with newer technologies just to see where it could go. And then it just becomes, to your point, Debbie, about just trying to think, you do the best you can to do a little research on where might this be applied best. You might get it right the first time, you might not, and then you try again. So it becomes an experiment. And then as those larger companies that can afford to do that start to share those experiences with everyone else, then we start to narrow it down, and it starts to get a lot easier in pinpointing those. And I think you mentioned a couple, Debbie, that I think are perfect for it. Safety, I think, is a big one. And I can remember when I was doing training development and building a team at IO, they created big portable data centers that could be shipped anywhere, and they were cooled and monitored by AI and really super smart. But they also had a boatload of power. And I remember we did a video, and I remember thinking the whole time we were shooting a video of them, pointing at the power cables and the power lines and how you get up there and how you not fall off this thing. You got to hook yourself in, and then you got to worry about the power coming in and all of that. And I remember thinking to myself, this would be so much better if we were doing it in VR. It would be so awesome for people to be able to virtually experience this kind of, the doing it wrong. Like, doing it wrong in real life is life and death. If you touch that hot wire that looks like a tiny little 10 gauge wire that would come out of your model car, right? But it's got some ungodly amount of watts running through it that will kill you if you touch it, kind of thing. So I don't know. I mean, I see those types of things as really obvious, but are there other ones that I'm missing? Safety seems like such a no-brainer.
Yeah,
I think So
there's lots of examples. One example that I saw recently was a large restaurant company is using AR to help restaurant workers estimate portion sizes of food that they're serving. So they can practice that before they actually serve the food. And just one thing I just want to point out too is we've always, any kind of emerging technologies, we've always tried to find a way to use the technologies to enhance the learning experience. I mean, we did that when we were doing 2D animation and 3D animation, and then some of the scenario-based learning and other things that we've done. I mean, there's got to be the right fit for it, and it has to be the right solution. And there's a place for it. There's definitely a great place to bring that in, but you've got to find and talk to your business leaders and find out what their challenges are. And AR, VR might not be the right solution for it, but there may be some aspects that you can use it for. One of the other things that some folks that I know that are doing it, and this was a result of some brainstorming that we did last year, is Shell Corporation is using AR for new employee orientation, and they're using it as part of a gamification project. And they wanted a way to bring in some scenario-based videos and to have them interactive during the course of the orientation. So they used augmented reality to do that, and their learners loved it. And then they're also using it for a scavenger hunt throughout the company, where people can go around and they can learn about different things and find things. And then they are incorporating that with other technologies to start conversations with the new employees. So there's lots of different things that you could use.
I would add to that a couple of frameworks are out there. One of them is just when things are dangerous, difficult, or hard to access, VR is often a good idea. So in Debbie's case, in the Houston area, you hear a lot of extractive industries use it because every machine that they have is a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment. So have somebody working on that repeatedly is not a great idea. And a lot of times it's sort of where safety and productivity blend. Is if you do it wrong, it's, you can't show people if you hit that the wrong way, it's going to, blow up. You can in VR. But similarly, things like, I did a session once that was kind of all about simulations, VR simulations. One of the first people to talk to me was somebody who had built a VR simulation for the repair of windmills, which, they're 100 feet above the ground. It's really expensive and difficult to get people up there to even know where things are. So you can make someone familiar with it and have them begin to learn what their job. Relatedly, there's a company in Oregon called ITI, and they train people on crane operation. They're, I think, one of the best in the world at it. And it's to the point where people can walk out of their simulator into a crane and be able to operate it. And you can do things with VR that are hard to do in reality, like figure out if someone's afraid of heights. It's hard to do that in an operating crane, but you can do that in 5 minutes with a VR simulation. So I think you're finding a lot of different places where it applies. Another one is believe it or not, inspections. So having people get good at finding what's wrong with the restaurant or with a job site, because you have them go through 15 or 16 or 50, as many as you want, different experiences where you can teach them, what did you miss, what did you see, and you can do that with relatively inexpensively or not.
Yeah, it is. I think we're getting much better at identifying these spots where it makes a difference to use VR and AR. I mean, it's I think there's still a little bit of negativity out there, but I think in general people are starting to get it and starting to figure it out. My first experience building it was in the semiconductor industry, and it wasn't about safety. It was about saving costs, because the costs of doing something wrong meant ruining, $250,000, $500,000 worth of potential microchips. The big wafers that they have. One wafer, I forget all the numbers, holds a certain number of potential microchips that could go into somebody's computer. Well, you put 10 of those wafers inside a little boat that gets put inside the machine that bakes it and does all of its stuff. if you drop it, if you push the wrong button on the machine and you fry all the wafers in the boat, there goes all that product. So that for them to spend, a few $100,000 on training was nothing, considering that a mistake could be a loss of twice that. So that's another way to do it. So that safety side of it, there's that high cost potential loss is another side of it. And from the AR perspective, I think just there's also that element of fun. And you mentioned the food portions part, and everybody kind of caught in on that on the chat. And a friend of mine did that a couple of years ago, actually created an app, and I don't know, it might be the same one, I don't know, but his was about just slicing food. And it was, so if you had a pie, for example, and you wanted to be able to slice it and make, if you wanted to cut it in, have 4 pieces, if you want to have 8 pieces, whatever, you would point it at it, tell it how many pieces you wanted out of it, and it would draw a diagram for you. And all you had to do was look at the phone, point it at it, and follow the diagram with your knife and cut it, whether it was a rectangular cake or a circular pie, or, it didn't matter what it was. It did all of the work for you. All you had to tell it was, how many pieces do you want? And it would draw a grid for you right on top of it. And I thought that was cool, but I'm not a cook, so I never used it. But I thought it was really neat for people who might, But anyway,
I think people, without realizing it, are already using some of these technologies in a consumer environment. So if you use the Amazon app on your phone, for a lot of the pieces that you buy, if you buy like if you go to buy an Amazon Echo, for example, there is an option that says "See it in your room." So you can actually see what the Echo or a lamp or something looks like in your room. And you think about that example and you apply it to a business case, you could visualize, putting something in a work environment or testing it. Google has a number of things that are AR enabled. For example, Google Maps, of course, Google Translate. That's something everybody can go try tomorrow if you want to pick up something that's written in Spanish or Chinese or something, and then use Google Translate to translate. Sometimes it's a little amusing, but you can yeah, it's amazing. You can see that that example. My favorite one, though, which incorporates AR and machine language or machine thinking, is there is an AR app out for solving Sudoku. So when you bring up a Sudoku, like if you're on the plane and you,
it's all the fun out of it, though, right?
Yeah, and you flip to that page where it has a Sudoku puzzle, and then you use that app, it will solve it for you. And just think about the machine learning behind that to produce that. It's just amazing. But those things are already out there in the consumer world, and we can engage in those. And I think those examples also help us spark and think of ways that we could use those in our enterprise and business environments as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Hugh, you got some other examples on the top of your head?
I think, a lot of what Debbie was talking about is in addition to that, I'm started going to voice again, but as a way to interface with information in a new way, I think people are getting more and more comfortable with new ways of doing it. And as I say, voice is a big one right now, whether it's with Alexa, Siri, or other things that are coming out. In fact, I think Bank of America just launched over the last summer, Erica, and it went from 0 to 3 million in like 2 months, because it's just a great way to interact with very kind of not that interesting information. You know what I mean? Like, it's nice to be able to just say, show me my balance, transfer some money from checking to savings. So I think you're seeing that in the consumer realm more and more, that ways of using new media to remove some friction, make things happen a little bit more smoothly and a little bit more engagingly. And I think you're going to see that more and more. I think that 2019, there are some cool things coming on the VR front in terms of Oculus Quest is going to be $400 for a walk around the room VR experience. I think that'll be a big deal. But I also think that AR has just an incredible run ahead of it. Being what they're calling it spatial computing. I don't know if you've come across that term before, but it's the idea that the computer knows the room you're in and maps out that room and is thinking about how to process information inside of that space.
Right.
That's pretty cool.
So I don't know if anybody in the audience uses Adobe Captivate, but when we go back to the VR 360 video arena, one of the things that happened in fall of last year is Adobe came out with some add-ons to Captivate that allows you to simulate a 360 environment and have interactive information. Kara just mentioned that Joe Gonchi had an article about Adobe Captivate that was really good. And that's one example. If you want to experiment with something that's out there that isn't expensive, you can, Adobe has the option where you can do the monthly subscription for, I think it's like $30, and you can experiment with 360 VR in an environment and create a learning experience for users at a fairly inexpensive cost. Camera, software, everything for under $500. And I would certainly check that out. And Joe also just published, I'm trying to remember which learning magazine it was in, but he published something about an article on the scenario program from Trivantis, which is a little more expensive, but it's also an e-learning program that you can use to create VR. So besides just going in and thank you, Kara, just creating some high-tech VR experiences that you would want to create on for the enterprise organization. If you want to dip your toe into this technology and try it, there are some low-cost solutions on the AR field. My go-to is Zappar. You can create some really neat VR experiences, and Zappar has the ability for you to have the back-end tracking so you can see who's looked at it, some other things. It's a great way for you to take those baby steps, as Molly is saying, where you can go out and try some of these technologies and not make that full-flown investment, and then think about, okay, if I've got to make that investment and do something that's a little more enterprise centric, then who do I go to? Do I create it in-house? Do I use an outside company? And how would I create that? And Ann just recommended that you look at Metaverse as well. So those are some other good companies that you can do, that you can look at.
Yeah, we used Zappar for our Christmas episode last month with Myra. And we did, she taught us all how to do a Christmas card with AR on it, because she hand draws them and sends them out with a little AR thing on it, and teaches her family members how to use it. I thought that was super creative. So we all got some hands-on fun with Zappar already. So those of you that maybe missed that, even though it's a holiday episode, you can go back and watch the recording and learn how to do that. And use Zappar for sure. I'm trying to get caught up on all of I missed my 30-minute break, but we don't have a sponsor this week, so that's okay. But I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Quetzalcoatl for giving me the heads up that it was at the 30-minute mark. I appreciate you dropping that in there with Craig not with us today. I appreciate you stepping up and filling in and helping be my producer today. So good stuff, and dropping in those links that you guys are finding, fantastic. Thank you very much. An, if you've got a link to Metaverse, if you could drop that in, that would be great. Super helpful for us. Anybody else that has some stuff that you're thinking of, that we've dropped in? Maybe if you've got some time while we're here chatting with each other, if you could do a quick search and find some of these links to these things that we're talking about, that'd be great. Super helpful.
I think we ought to talk a little bit about IT. What do you think, Hugh?
Actually, it's funny. I was thinking the same thing, because Kim and I have been, I replied to a point.
Sure.
Want me to start? So one of the things that is surfaced by the fact that Walmart's bought 17,000 of these Oculus Go's is that Oculus and the other makers of headsets, whether it's HTC or some of the Chinese providers, none of them are thinking about corporate deployment. So Vive they have a nice little package that will give you a phone number to call, but they don't think about device management. They don't think about access control. So if you're thinking about deploying VR amongst a really big group of people, that's kind of the next frontier that I know they're actively thinking about. But I don't think you're going to find that Facebook, which is a very consumer-focused company, or HTC is not, but I don't think you're going to find either of them solve this security and access problem any more than iPhone did. So when BYOD became a big thing 6-7 years ago, it was VMware that came out and said, we're going to be a way for you to do mobile device management. I think you're going to find the same thing. In fact, I know some companies that are looking at this right now. There's one called Augmate out of they're in Mountain View right now. And they do device management for AR, a little more focused on the AR headsets that are typically used in factories. But the point being is that I think now that people are past the pilots, or at least a lot of people have been through a pilot, they feel like, all right, this is valuable, but I want to give this to 10,000 people. How do I do that? So I think that it's interesting Debbie brought that up. Okay, how do I secure these machines? How do I make them into an IT department managed thing instead of my interns in the L&D department keeping track of where my 3 or 4 Vives are? It's a different level of scale that I think we're graduating to right now.
Yeah, and I think isn't it going to be like when operations managers and COOs start to see the value in that, they might start requesting those types of purchases from the IT department. And then whether it's about training or whether it's just about improving their performance or repairing machinery or, whatever, when the training department goes and asks for a giant budget or asks for IT to make some changes, it rarely happens. But when operations or the highest level folks go, hey, this is the direction we need to go as a business, then IT starts to listen and they say, okay, yeah, we do need to be figuring out how we're going to buy these things and integrate them into our existing systems. Am I right?
Yeah.
I think it's going to wind up being meeting in the middle, because it's worth knowing, in 2016, when the Vive was first made available to, normal people, I bought one because I can't help myself. And it took me like 8 hours to get it to work because it was super buggy and you've got, all these different drivers and this and that. So I think what you've seen over the last, year and a half, 2 years is the products have gotten smaller, better, more and more, baked and professional. And I think we talk about the Oculus Go. For those of you who've experienced it, it's probably the first time you're in a VR experience that feels like it's made for normal people, not for hackers, not for developers. And I think that the Quest is going to be like that as well. They've just kind of cracked the normal user level. So I think that you're going to find, on the one hand, the software management side of it will get, the requirements will be there, so people will go and make off-the-shelf solutions, as opposed to, like, someone made a comment about the military. The military is going to pay Bain or someone like that to make a solution that's relevant to them, and it probably won't be something you can go buy. You're right; they probably already have solved it. I think you'll find people with like a VMware like bit of soft middleware that you can just go buy off the shelf. But at the same time, the software is getting better. Like, the Go you manage through an iPhone app. Okay, well, there's no reason you couldn't make that iPhone app part of a system that is the entry point. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? They've made it easier already, so it's not such a big step to say, let's have a VMware SDK that goes into that Oculus Go app so that you can make it work. And I'm sure this is happening, soon. I hope.
Yeah, I think that the hardware and the software is, it's going to be something that we'll be able to work out. But for me, I think the bigger issue from the standpoint of the enterprise's data collection and how that data collection is going to be managed, and ensuring that the data is handled with the IT security policies, and that they have a good understanding. I mean, we already have a lot of systems that are external to the organization. A lot of learning management systems reside on Amazon servers or external servers, and IT departments have resolved themselves to be okay with that. But I think that any data collection through these emerging technologies is a huge challenge, and we have to solve that problem.
Is that where LRSs and XAPI and whatnot is gonna come into play, you think?
Yeah, it is, and just making sure that you loop in IT and that they have a good understanding of where that data is going to reside and what you're going to do about it.
Yeah. Because the LRS doesn't automatically solve that for you. The company has to have a policy. A great example. There's a company that makes a VR solution for police. There's a few of them, but one I know particularly well. And they're training police to react better in split-second decisions, which obviously has been in the news for the last 2 years. The problem that this company was having is, what do I do with the results of the training of individual officers? Because God forbid there's an incident, all that training becomes evidence. That's a really extreme example of a policy problem that they faced. But I think in Debbie's case, what if somebody's not keeps doing badly in management simulations? So instead of having role play, one of the great ways that VR is increasingly valuable is you can put people in a situation where they're coaching or they're doing whatever. But what if somebody routinely has a problem, but it doesn't matter until there's maybe where do you store that? How do you treat that? Is that private? Is that their property? Or you see what I mean? Like already L&D has a little bit of a thing with concern about privacy, but in this case, you're talking about orders of magnitude more data and orders of magnitude more granular data that really speaks to their personality and things that are not about whether they did or didn't know the sequence of facts, but whether they're, quote unquote, a good person or have a bad temper or whatever. I mean, that sort of thing was fuzzy before, but now you have, you could get quantitative evidence that they raise their voice a lot or whatever. So I think one of the things Debbie's really talking about is, what are the policies and how have you thought them through about what you're going to do with this data that you want to collect because you want to improve people, but now you've got it. So what do you do? And I haven't heard anybody have a thoughtful solution to that. Like in the law firms will say 7 years and we throw, I don't know that number's right. There's a threshold after which they'll throw away records. I think that's even legally stipulated. Well, you might think about the same thing, either in light of GDPR or, I don't know, some other thing.
It's similar to the types of business process issues we had around BYOD, right? Bring your own device to work kind of thing, or expectations of training. Like we tend to just throw out all the time, oh, yay, we can create training that people can take anywhere at any time. Well, on the side of things and the legal side of things, some of our employee base has to be paid if they're going to be doing work, which training falls under work, if they do it at home. So if they take a training course at home at 10 o'clock at night, do they get paid for that? Are they on the clock? Are they off the clock? If they are and they get hurt, is the company responsible? And there's all of those types of issues. I think, and I don't know if they've been solved with mobile learning yet, but mobile learning's been around and implemented at larger scale than VR has at this point. So you'd think we might be able to learn something from that. But you're right. I haven't heard anybody talking about those business process issues and the policies that we need to be concerned about. Maybe we have to wait for the first big screw up, right? And somebody gets dinged.
I see. I've had clients, like I had one prospect. We were talking about a web VR solution, which was using mobile to deliver relatively simple VR experiences. And he said, I can't make my, especially non-salaried employees pay for the data usage. I can't, and I think that was worrying about it more than his whatever. I thought they overdid it with concern, but exactly what you're saying is they said, no, I'm not going to make my people even pay for notifications. Forget about for VR over the web or over wireless. I don't know. I think that when people are looking at scale deployments, I don't know if sometimes I'm sure there'll be a screw up, but other times I think it's sitting down with the right people in the room to sort of beat up and pre-mortem what could go wrong, and let's figure that out. And then they'll bring the lawyers in, and everything will be solved.
I don't know if we all like the whole bringing the lawyers in part.
I'm just kidding. Yeah. Touch of irony. But when it comes to the privacy, you are going to need to include them. Obviously, it's just how and when you do it.
Yeah, it always is. It tends to be when you get the legal guys in the room and gals. It always tends to be the answer is always no. No.
Yeah, things don't get.
But we've had this same argument for years over other kinds of technologies, and eventually things just went out. I mean, I think what drives a lot of it is we're using a lot of these technologies and things in our consumer environment, and people get used to doing things a certain way, and it's going to happen. It just is.
Yeah. Yeah, we use brute force, I think, to beat the legal people into submission. Sooner or later, they have to redo how they work to fit how everything's happening inside the business.
Brett, if I may, Debbie just brought something up that I'd love to throw out, and that is, as we think about VR and AR now versus over time, I think the value for L&D professionals is to begin to understand how media in space, whether it's VR or AR, how people react to that and how it does or doesn't work at a human level, because the technology is going to be moving relatively quickly. We expect there to be BYOD, pretty widespread adoption of this on a personal level. I think you're going to find that it'll be a BYOD thing within a reasonable time frame, 2 or 3 years. And as a result, it'd be nice by then to have done some things and understand how it works, so that you're ready for it, because it is legitimately different from how video works or how other things work.
Yeah, and Quinn, thanks for mentioning video. We still have a lot of enterprises out there that still can't figure out how to deliver video experiences internally effectively at all. They complain that they don't have the bandwidth. It's like, how come YouTube works? How come we can't get our internal video to work? But that's a whole nother conversation, maybe for Video Friday with Sam Rogers. But we're hitting the top of the hour. Thank you, Mr. Q, for keeping me on track and being my producer today and letting me know what time we're at. So let's do a quick wrap up here and tell folks, besides TLDC 19, where you're going to be bringing all sorts of goodies and showing fantastic examples and educating everybody on all of these things that we've discussed today, where else can people find you?
Well, I will be, besides TLDC, or TLDC, I will be at the ATD Technology Conference in West Palm Beach in February. I'm speaking at the Adobe conference in Washington, D.C. in March, and also at Learning Solutions. I'll be at the Skillsoft Perspectives Conference in April, and then at the ATD International Conference in May. Pretty much have things lined up all the way through the rest of the year, but those are the immediate things. And I'll be doing a lot of talking about AR. Just had my TD at Work issue published by ATD. The link's out there in the chat area if you guys want to check that out. It's brand new, and if you are a member of ATD, you can get that for free as part of your member benefits.
Very nice. You?
Yeah, I am not quite as prolific as Debbie, but I'll be at, obviously, TLDC. I'll be at Learning Solutions. We're actually with our local ATD chapter in the New York area. We're doing a big day-long AR symposium. AI symposium, and on March 1st, rather, as well as at the eLearning Guild's DevLearn. We're doing a full-day AI symposium, which will be really exciting, and a few other things here and there. But super excited about 2.5 weeks from now. It's gonna be great.
Geez, is it 2.5 weeks? I keep telling people we're 4 weeks out, but I guess you're right. We're a lot closer than I thought.
I was doing the math in my head. I may be off a little bit, but anyway.
You're freaking me out, Hugh.
It's tomorrow.
It's all
what
good. We're
about?
super excited about it, and definitely looking forward to having you guys there. Thanks again for bringing the high tech to TLDC 19 this year for us. We're definitely looking forward to having you guys.
Thank you. And I'll,
excellent.
yeah, and I'll just
Thanks
throw
for
out a
having me.
challenge, guys. Get out there, try it. Try some. Go out there and find some AR, some VR things that you can try and experience it. And you can always reach out to Hugh or I if you've got questions or you just want to chat up some more.
Awesome. Yeah, I was just going to say, everybody, this is part of what the community is all about. It's part of what we do here at TLDC. We have our Slack channel for those of you that have not joined us in Slack. We also have a new URL, a much easier URL to get to that Slack channel if you are not a Slack user. And now it's easier to go to www.tldchat.us, and that'll get you hooked up with our 24/7 conversation around TLDC. So super cool. Debbie, Hugh, thanks again. I'm going to close out your video and we're going to wrap this up today. Good to see you guys. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Fantastic. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us today on TLDcast. What a great episode. So many people showing up today. Paul Buffler, great to see you in. Christopher, great to see you here today. Neil Lasher hanging out with us. I have not seen you in a while, Neil. Happy New Year and welcome. Delia Smola, good to see you too. And so many of you. Alan's here. Everybody hanging out with us today. And the new folks. Patty hanging out with us. I'm not too sure which Patty that is. I know a few Patties, but great for hanging out. Bill, good to see you as well. And all of our great TLDCers and members. Kim, great questions today. Thank you so much for engaging with us in the chat. Again, we couldn't do this without you guys, and the community would be so boring if it was just Luis and myself. So thanks for hanging out with us, and thanks for making TLDC what it is, because we certainly couldn't do it without you guys. You guys are the ones that make TLDC what it is and make the community a community, and we appreciate every last one of you for being here. Thank you all so much. Everybody get out there and train somebody today, and don't forget, learn something new. Aha.
Minds will be blown.